let's talk about the deck that I played at Euros. I obviously told you guys like weeks ago already, I'm going to try to make Vanquish Soul or Sky Striker work because I enjoy them so much that I'm willing to put a lot of time and effort into making them viable for the European Championship. The deck I ultimately decided on was Vanquish Soul because I just felt like it was the better deck of the two. I tried Sky Striker, but I didn't really feel like it was quite good enough, even though someone did make top 8 with Sky Striker at Euros, which I thought was really cool. But for me, the choice ultimately was Vanquish Soul because I felt like the deck was powerful enough to perform, and I'm very happy to say that it did perform for me, and it also performed for a lot of other people because ultimately it was also the deck that won the event, and they even played a Vanquish Soul mirror match in the finals, which I thought was pretty impressive for Vanquish Soul. The deck was actually a very, very well-performing deck at the tournament. So what we're going to do first now is I'm just going to show you guys the list that I played, also for making day 2 and then for making top 32. I got myself a Card Trooper, and then I pulled a Gale the Whirlwind in my day 2 pack, which, you know, is a Blackwing, but at the same time, it is also, luckily, the only cool Blackwing that they ever made. So that's cool. I got that one. I'm happy about that. And then the Card Trooper is also really cool, so I'm happy about that one. I'll talk you through the list for Vanquish Soul. I do think it's like parts of Vanquish Soul have already been kind of standardized. Like everyone understands which kind of cards you need to be playing at 3. But we'll be talking about some of the more interesting choices I think I made. So let's just go and talk about the list and get that out of the way. So obviously you're going to play 3 Raisin and 3 Madlove. Madlove in this format at the moment is definitely the weaker starter of the two, because Madlove, you usually search the field spell, and if that's your only play and your opponent has Droll and Lockbird, then that is not very good. Raisin, however, is very good into Droll and Lockbird, and this is one of the things I realized, and I also think this is one of the reasons why a lot of people played this deck ultimately at this tournament and why people did well with this deck. This deck is surprisingly good into Droll and Lockbird, but also Mold Charmies. Like, not every single hand is good against Droll, but like a lot of the hands, especially when you draw Raisin, if you get Drolled, you don't really care because you just go normal summon Raisin, add Holy Sue. If they Droll you, you go make Rock, add back Raisin to your hand. You have a full hand, you pass over to your opponent, and you can just do all the things that you were going to do on your turn. You can just do them on your opponent's turn anyways, right? Like you would go, like, once they summon, you can go Rock, Special Raisin, search yourself for Dark or Fire, whatever you're missing for your Holy Sue, and then go Raisin, pop their monsters, summon Holy Sue, take, or summon Borger, or summon Caesar, or whatever. Like, you can do a lot of things after getting Drolled, and the same thing applies to Mold Charmies. If you don't want to commit heavily into the Mold Charmies, you don't have to. And then, obviously, you're going to play 3 Holy Sues. This is the best card in the deck now, because it doubles as it's a starter, it's engine, and it's also interruption on the opponent's turn. This card is crazy. I don't really think I have to go over why it's so powerful, because it's going to give you a special summon on your own turn. Surprisingly, if you have setup with this deck, you're going to want to use the take effect on your opponent's turn more often than the summon effect, because the summon effect can be interrupted by Ash Blossom or Dominus Impulse or something like that. And if you already have like Raisin in rotation and Caesar in rotation because you went first and you were able to get all those attributes already, then I think it's better to use this to take on the opponent's turn, independent of the matchup. I decided to play 3 Heavy Borgers and 2 Jiaolongs, this is I think the only thing that you can really mess around with is the ratios of Borger and Jiaolong in this deck. Personally, neither of these two are great draws. Unless you already have combo, because these are basically don't play on their own, of course. Fire is technically the more important attribute, but I thought when I was playing the deck that Heavy Borger was a better card to draw in general, because it helps you play around Droll and Lockbird a little bit when you hard draw Heavy Borger, because what you do is you normal summon Raisin or Madlove, you activate the effect, and then you chain Borger to return it to your hand. So that, let's say you go normal summon Madlove, chain Borger, you add the field spell, and then when your opponent activates Droll and Lockbird, you can chain Borger to reveal the Madlove to draw a card. which makes that opening a lot better into Droll Lockbird, because you're going to draw a card on your turn and you're going to draw a card on your opponent's turn, which just gives you like 2 extra cards to work with, which is huge in a deck like Vanquish Soul, right? Like, because if you didn't have Holy Sue before, if you didn't have Raisin or whatever, you get 2 cards to try and find it, and you can still make Rock to play with that on your opponent's turn. So like I thought that was very important. The third Jiaolong is something I really wanted to play, but I just didn't have room, and I valued more non-engine over it, and that's why it had to go. But like the ratio between these two is not the most important. I think we had lists where I think Dinka played 2 and 2 at Euros. We had 3 Jiaolong, 2 Borger for a long time. I switched it the other way around on the Friday. I decided to do it the other way around, but I think it's like there's arguments for and against all of these. And then there's obviously one Caesar, and that's all the Vanquish Soul names you play. For other non-engine monsters, there's 3 Ash Blossoms, obviously, because it's a fire monster. I will say you use Ash Blossom differently in this deck a lot of the times. Like, you are not trying to Ash the first thing that they do very often. Of course, there is exceptions, but very often you're going to want to hold this in your hand as long as possible so that you can reveal it for your different effects. Sometimes going second, if it's your only fire and you have like a Stake Your Soul, for example, you might have to hold it throughout your opponent's entire turn and hold it for later. Usually you want to throw this as late as possible just so you can keep revealing it for your other effects. For example, Jiaolong to search is like something that it's very hard to do. It's very hard to afford to just search 2 fires to your hand, so having an Ash in your hand really helps with that. Also, another thing that I noticed during testing and also during the European Championship, I think I never Ashed a Molcharmi in this deck. Like, there are only in very, very, very few situations you actually want to Ash a Molcharmi. Most of the time, you just say, okay, draw 1 or 2 cards, you make your half board, which is basically your full board, and just keep the Ash in hand. Speaking of Molcharmis, I believe Molcharmis are the best non-engine by far in Vanquish Soul because they draw you extra cards, and this deck really functions off of extra cards. I don't believe you actually want to use a lot of non-engine that reduces your hand size, especially when you're going second. Like, cards like DD Crow and Bell or whatever, even though they technically have the right attributes for you, those attributes don't matter if you just discard those cards early on into the game, because, like, you know, your opponent starts with Prayers or something and you Bell it. That the fact that Bell is an Earth monster does not help you at all. Or the fact that DD Crow is a Dark does not help you much if you use it very early on. And so I was basically always going to play the 6 Molcharmis. But later on, I even added 2 Meowls, which is the worst Molcharmi in the current format, unless you're playing against Malice. But what I noticed is I am playing a small amount of other non-engine. Like, I'm playing some Bestials, but like, I had a lot of versions of this deck where I was playing a lot of other non-engine. I was playing like Crows, Bells, Bestials. And very often I noticed that I don't think those cards count as real hand traps when you're going second. Against some of the decks in the format at the moment, like drawing a DD Crow or drawing a Bestial is not going to win you the game. Like, you're playing against Malice, you're playing against Mitsurugi, you're playing against other Ryziel stuff. Like, you draw a Bestial in those matchups, it's not a hand trap. It does not interrupt your opponent to the point where you can actually win the game. That does not happen. So you are basically only playing those cards for the attributes. At which point I felt like it was better to take the chance, even if Meowls is not the best Charmy in a matchup. If it can give me 1 draw, that is going to be a chance for me to draw non-engine that actually does something. Like, if I can draw 1 or 2 cards off of Meowls, that gives me a realistic chance to draw a Fuva or a Holy Sue or the missing attribute for my Holy Sue or whatever, right? Like, if my opponent starts Mitsurugi Ritual, send Nightsword Serpent and Kusanagi, and then like activate the Nightsword Serpent, and I Meowls them there, I have a really good chance of drawing a relevant card for the matchup. You know, like, it's basically Upstart Goblin in hand trap form. Also, there's another thing I realized. There's only one issue I think that Vanquish Soul has at the moment, which is a very slight consistency issue. And I believe that if you ever brick with a deck, it's best to brick on Charmies. Like if I go first and I draw 2 more Charmies and I don't really have a play or whatever, I think it's completely fine to just pass, because it's really difficult to actually win against Mole Charmies in this deck. Like for example, my top 32 feature match, I bricked going first, but I had Fuvalos and Meowls, which I think is technically really, really good against Mitsurugi Fiendsmith. It just happened that they had Ash and Cold Buy for both of them. So, but otherwise, I think that hand was actually not bad. I think my hand was actually okay in that feature match for going first. You know, like I had 2 Charmies. If they decide to play into that, it's actually a disaster against this deck, because it's really difficult to give this deck draws safely. Plus, there's obviously the off chance that you play into a matchup where this is actually really, really good. Like Malice is obviously a very relevant deck at the moment. And if you play against like more Mitsurugi heavy versions of Mitsurugi Ryzeal, or like even the Fiendsmith stuff, like Meowls actually becomes like a really annoying card to deal with. So I was really happy with this. I was really happy with the Charmies. And it actually, another thing that happens a lot in this deck is you go first, you activate Extravagance, your opponent rolls you, you have 6 cards in hand, you have 1 or 2 Charmies, you just say pass, and it does not matter, because you're just going to Charmy them, and then they cannot give you cards, because you already have 6 cards. If they give you any more, you're just going to like holy sue them on their turn, and you're fine, you know. So that's fine. Then basically the Charmies, I think, are the only non-engine that really works in this deck for going second. Everything else is just like eh. So I wanted to play the best non-engine for going first, which I do think in this deck is Nibiru. I think if this deck ever goes first and sets up a half board, I think Nibiru makes it unbreakable for the opponent, basically in every matchup. Even the matchups that normally don't care about Nibiru, if you have a board, if you have a way to interrupt them a little bit, Nibiru becomes crazy. And it's especially good in those scenarios that I just talked about. Like, let's say I do brick on Charmies going first, I don't have a play, and my opponent tries to go for game. I wanted to have cards in my deck to draw into to stop them from going for game. And so Nibiru was really good for me all weekend. And then to round things off, there's 3 Bestials. Like I said, I don't think Bestials really count as super strong non-engine at the moment. They are really good when you go first, similar to Nibiru. If you have a little bit of a board, then actually like a Baldrake is really strong. But it's just, I like these because these are darks, and you need some more darks in this deck, because we have 6 darks over here, and we wanted some more. And I think Bestials are good because they are non-engine that you can hold for very long. Like there's not many cases where you Bestial super early. Most of the time it's okay to have a Bestial in hand against Mitsurugi, for example, to like reveal it a couple of times, and then you can Bestial them very late, which I think is really good, as opposed to something like a Bell or a Crow or whatever that you can that you usually have to use relatively early. Well, I think Crow is fine instead of Bestials, but I think Bestials are just better than Crow. And this was all the non-engine I played basically. And then there's 3 Stake Your Soul, 3 Pot of Extravagance. I know what you guys are gonna say, but at the moment this card is mandatory in this deck. Yes, I banished 3 rocks in my feature match. It was the only time it happened. But it also, funnily enough, in that matchup, it didn't even matter, because I didn't even draw a Vanquish Soul monster to make my rock. So it really did not matter. At the same time, if you play this deck, you're going to notice you don't actually need rock to win a lot of games. Like, in a lot of games, even if you did banish all rocks, you would be completely fine. The Pot of Extravagance is necessary in this deck. This deck needs the added bit of consistency. The extra bit of card advantage also is really good. This is one of the best cards to have against Droll and Lockbird, because when you get Droll and Lockbirded after Extravagance in this build, there's a very high chance you have Charmies in hand and you can just say go. And you don't have to worry about like you know getting Drolled. You just have 6 cards in hand with Charmies, and your opponent can't really play into it because your deck plays Holy Sue, Nib, and Bestial, so like it's very strong. And just having extra attributes in your hand because you have card advantage is really strong. Also, baiting Ash Blossom to make sure your Stake Your Soul resolves or your Raisin resolves, it is way too important. That being said, I did not play Pot of Prosperity in this deck because I did not want to play 4 pots. I did not want to play too many spell cards that are not attributes that I cannot reveal for my effects. And I just felt like when I was testing this deck that 3 pots was the sweet spot. I didn't want to play Prosperity and then go Pot of Extravagance, draw into another pot, and those kind of things. I also didn't feel like Pot of Prosperity really baited Ash Blossom as much as Pot of Extravagance. And I also, I also don't think the what's it called? The benefit of Pot of Prosperity, I don't think is the same as Pot of Extravagance in this deck, because going +1 is super relevant and it's worth risking the Droll and Lockbird. Whereas in Pot of Prosperity, you just go like, all right, I'll add a starter to hand. Like most of the time when you use Pot of Prosperity, you're going to add like Raisin or something, and then you get Drolled, but then the Raisin you just added has a lot less value. And so I didn't like that. So the remaining 3 cards are just Rhoda, Start, and the Trap card. So that's the main deck. This deck is always going to play 40 cards because you really want to see your starters. Honestly, I have no complaints about the main deck. The only card that I think you could consider adding is like the 3rd Jiaolong, just for another fire monster. But I do not know what I would take out. Probably 1 Meowth if you wanted to add the 3rd Jiaolong. Yeah. Extra deck is pretty straightforward because I noticed that a lot of the time, like there was only very, very few monsters that you actually need in your extra deck besides Rock. So I just decided to play multiples of the ones that I really needed and not go for a lot of utility because I didn't feel like this deck needs utility in the extra deck, because most of the situations you can just handle with your main deck. So I played 3 Rocks, 2 SP Little Knights, 1 Dark and 1 Hita. Just for some utility to go into SP in different scenarios. There's 2 Rocks along the 2 Zeus. I think this together makes a lot of sense because Rock is a very good Zeus enabler. There's a lot of random scenarios, especially in the Ryziel matchup, where this deck can make a Zeus out of nowhere and your opponent will not expect it. Like, for example, when you attack a duo drive with a Caesar, for example, you can make Zeus in main phase 2. Because you can go Rocks on top of Caesar, and then because they're duo drive battled, you can make Zeus on top of Rocks. And the same thing with like King of the Feral Imps, or sometimes you have people that summon they summon Detonator in defense mode because they are afraid of Druis Worm crashing into it or something like that. And then you can just like even if they have an Xyz in defense position, you can even just like run one of your small Vanquish Souls into it. Like you can like normal summon Madlove, attack into defense position Xyz monster, and then main phase 2 you do this. It comes up more often than you would think, and so I really wanted to make sure that I have the combination after I resolve an Extravagance. The other important card for me was Typhon. I think Typhon, like literally everything other than Rock, we're talking like it comes up maybe twice the entire tournament. So even though I played these as 2-ofs, they really don't come up that often. You could make an argument to just play 1 of everything because most of the other things just don't happen very often, which I think is also fair enough. Like, for example, we did consider playing the Promethean Princess, Atlantis, Raging Phoenix package and all that. We did think about that. And it just felt weird to me to play like a combination of cards that they only matter really together. And then if you Pot of Extravagance, most likely one of those is going to be gone. So I decided against it. And then there's 1 Baguska for some very dire situations. And then there's a Paradise Smasher. These 2 I never made. The idea behind the Paradise Smasher is that if you get Drolled or if you get Charmied, you can make it. But honestly, I'm always preferred just not going for the gamble. I did play these 2 because they can help you go into Zeus as well. Like if you have 2 level 5s and you want an Exceed to go into Zeus, this technically also does that. But I never made either of these. In testing, it came up very rarely. But yeah, so the ones that really came up are the ones up here. The last 2 are just like random options because I didn't know what else to put. These could have also been Promethean, Zalantis, and then like something else could have been the Raging Phoenix. But it's like, besides the Rock, you really don't need many other things. Have you considered a better rank 5? So this was a Tiras for some time in testing. We had Tiras here because we felt like it was the best one to make Zeus. But then I realized you can also make Zeus with this in a lot of scenarios, and then that would also be fine. So this basically has like it has a little more utility than Tiras because it can make Zeus, but it also can be an option in a very weird scenario where you get hand trapped like crazy. So yeah, but it never came up. Side deck. Side deck, I think, is the weakest spot of this deck, specifically because of this card. I am not really happy with playing Droll Lockbird in this deck. I think it's not great because it conflicts with all of the Charmies. It has a terrible attribute, and it's a terrible card mid game. Because it doesn't take resources away from your opponent if you draw it in like a grind game, which this deck grinds a lot, and it's supposed to grind really well. And obviously, I mean, I drew 3 of this in the feature match when I lost in top 32, which is just mega unfortunate, but that's not really an argument against the card. Like, if you draw 3 of the same card, usually it's gonna suck. But like, I mean, I feel like you can see from the feature match how like having triple Droll was like infinitely worse than having a card that actually trades with a resource. Like, let's say you have 3 ashes in that spot, right? Like, you can actually trade with 3 cards in their hand, and maybe there's a chance I can win. But with Droll, I'm just like playing catch up with my opponent where they do something and I'm just like, okay, well, I bricked, but I'm gonna Droll you and you can just continue next turn, but I still go -1 on every interaction. The only reason I'm playing this is because it felt like the only thing to consistently stop some of the Ryziel decks. And the only reason why I'm siding it in, for example, in the feature match against Mitsurugi, Ryziel going first, where normally I would not side in Droll Lockbird in this matchup, but I have to side in something because I'm main decking all the Charmies, of course. But the side deck, there was just not enough space to fit something else. Like it would have all worked out if I just didn't play Droll Lockbird, but then I would not have had an answer for like the crazy Ryziel hand loop stuff and like the crazy combo Ryziel stuff. And I felt like I needed that. And that's why Droll is here. But yeah. 3 Lancia, 2 Chaos Hunter. I think as a result of playing this deck, I had no problems with Malice. I beat every Malice I faced. I main deck 8 Charmies, including Meows. I side deck these. It's honestly, I feel like it's crazy that we even felt the need to play these cards, but like Malice is so hard to stop with quote unquote fair hand traps, you know? It's so difficult to stop Malice with other stuff that we still felt the need to play these even after main decking like 8 Charmies already. But like the thing under the Charmies is like the Charmies are good against Malice, but they still make really strong board under Charmies. So like you still need more than just the Charmies. There's 2 Vados. This was a card that was mainly meant for the mirror match, but I really liked that it had application in other matchups as well. So if you don't know what Vados does, is it destroys a field spell and then summons to your opponent's side of the field. And then when it gets sent from the field to the graveyard, you can like Darkhold the entire board basically. The idea behind this card is that in the mirror match, interaction with the field spell is really strong. Because when you go Mad Love into the field spell and then you get interrupted on the field spell, you lose a lot of resources from that. You lose the field spell, which means you can't have the protection from it. You don't get the search because it was destroyed. And in the end phase, you don't get the trap card, which basically means that interacting with the field spell takes away 3 cards from your opponent. And you, at the same time, you also give them the Vados onto their side of the field, which is basically like a ticking time bomb, because at any moment you can summon Raisin into the column of the Vados and just blow it up, and that's going to blow up the entire board. So Vados was cool. I decided not to play 3 after a while because we had space issues, but also because the side, it's basically, there's 1 Ghost Ogre, which technically does the same thing, but it's different. It's because of the siding patterns that it needed to be 1 Ghost Ogre, because in some matchups, when I want to take out all the Charmies, I needed 1 more card to side in, but Vados wasn't good enough, so I split it up between, it was 3 Vados before, I split it to 2 Vados and 1 Ghost Ogre, so that the Ghost Ogre can be like the 8th card to side in some matchups. Also, both of these are decent against Malice, especially after the Charmies, because when they give you draws and then you like Vados the field spell or you Ghost Ogre the Splash Mage, this can really help against Malice. So this is basically, we can side in 8 extra hand traps against Malice that are all really good. And in the off chance that you draw 2 of them, it's better to draw 1 Vados, 1 Ghost Ogre than 2 Vados. So that's why it wasn't 3. It would have been 3 if I had more room in the deck, but the Drolls made it really awkward. The Droll is the one card in the side deck I didn't really want to play because it messed up my ratio so much. Like, I had such a clean side deck beforehand with like 3 Vados, 3 Chaos Hunter, like 2 Ghost Ogre or something. Like, it was all working out, but then I just didn't have enough for like the crazy Ryziel variations. But yeah, these are both for Mirror, for Malice, and for some other random matchups where they play a field spell or... funnily enough, you can side Vados technically against everything going first because you have a field spell, which can be a very strong setup when you have, let's say you have your own field spell up and you have a Raisin, and they keep summoning into different columns, right? They don't summon into the Raisin column. So what you can do is if the column next to the Raisin is open, you can just destroy your own field spell, give them Vados, and then blow it up with Raisin. If they have like 4 other monsters in all the other zones, which can happen. But it requires you to... it's still risky if your opponent plays no field spells. So I prefer to just side it in matchups where it can interrupt the opponent. Then I think the best card for going first in this deck, hands down, is Shared Ride. Because this card is broken if you... This is like a consistency card for this deck. Because even if you draw no play, but just Shared Ride, if your opponent has to play into the Shared Ride to win, you're going to get 1, 2, 3 cards. And similar to the Molcharmies, it is really hard to give this deck cards without basically losing. Like, most of the time when you give me 2 or 3 cards off of Shared Ride, I'm just going to be able to interrupt you to a point where you can't win. Like, I play Holy Sue, I play Nib, I play Bestials. If you play into Shared Ride, it's basically doomed. Which is another reason why I hated to side deck Droll and Lockbird for going first. Like, these two together, it's like a nightmare. It feels really bad to play Droll in this deck, but I felt like, once again, I felt like there was no other card that beat Ryziel consistently enough in some variations. So yeah. And then another card, because we needed something to side deck going first basically all the time, was 1 talent. So that's basically what I meant earlier for the Ghost Ogre. In a lot of matchups, my going first side deck was, let's say, these 7, right? But I have 8 Charmies. So I needed 1 card that I can side deck, and so like the Ghost Ogre was that card in some matchups, where I wasn't confident in siding Vados, right? So that's why I didn't want to do 3 Vados, because if I don't want to do this, then it's awkward. Yeah. So that's the side deck. Overall, I am 99% happy with the deck. Once again, the Droll and Lockbird, I feel like maybe there was a better solution to this. If maybe you find a better way to beat Ryziel, to not play Droll and Lockbird, maybe that would have been perfect. But I just wasn't confident in the ability to beat Ryziel without Droll and Lockbird going second. Yeah. Other than that, main deck, really happy. Extra deck, no complaints. Didn't miss a single card. And I felt like I went 11-1 in Swiss, which I felt like was pretty cool. I lost 1 match to Mitsurugi Ryziel. I beat every Malice. I beat some mirror matches. I beat a bunch of Mitsu Ryziels as well. And then beat Malice in top 64 and lost to Mitsu Ryziel in top 32. Of course, the feature match is out there. Didn't draw a playable hand in game 1 or game 2, which, I mean, it does happen. This is something I knew about this deck. I knew this deck has some consistency issues, even though I think my game 1 hand was actually... I would classify my game 1 hand as a good hand. Like, my game 1 hand was like... my game 1 hand was going first. It definitely had Holy Sue. I don't remember what the last card was. Maybe Jiaolong? Something along those lines. I would classify that as a good hand. I think it was Borger instead of Jiaolong. I would classify this as a good hand because it's actually like really difficult for Mitsu Ryziel to beat this hand if they don't have ways to negate the Charmies. Unfortunately, I felt especially good when my opponent... I got Peruliad in draw phase, and I'm like, okay, cool, that's actually good for me, right? 1 less card for you. and I just pass over, I'm like, okay, Mitsuraizial Fiendsmith, I have Meowls and Fuva. Like, how are they gonna play into that? I'm gonna be able to, and I have Holy Suit to take as well, later, and then they just have Ash and Called By for and full combo for both of my Charmies. I'm like, okay, well, now it's a bad hand. But that happens. Look, that happens. Nothing. I don't think that was. I don't think that's too big of a deal. I mean, it's part of the game. Sometimes you need to get lucky to win these tournaments. That's all right. My opponent also ended up going to Worlds, so that's fine. And we still have Master Duel Worlds to play. So there's always going to be another year, another attempt. I'm happy with how I did. I'm happy with how I played for the most part. So it was a good event. It was a good tournament. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed the deck profile. If you've been watching on YouTube, sorry that there haven't been that many uploads recently. I've been busy because of Euros, but we will be hopefully returning to more uploads soon. I have Justice Hunters videos planned for the new stuff. I am excited for Justice Hunters after Euros. I think the new decks look incredibly fun. However, obviously, I'm also going to be a little focused on Master Duel Worlds, so who knows what exactly we're going to be doing throughout August, but definitely going to be some focus on Master Duel. For now, I hope you enjoyed the Euros deck profile. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and all that good stuff. I appreciate that, and thank you for watching. Bye-bye, YouTube.